kick off the recording for Module 5, Chapters 12 and 13 of the text. All right. So, in the reading, the final two sections, well, Module 35, what's going on there? The final two sections are about the management during the event, so how to process things the day of, as well as after the event. So, what do we have to be thinking about as we wrap up, as we clean up, and as we plan for the next year? So, when thinking about that final section of your individual project, the event evaluation and the monitoring the economic impact, those are the two things I would like to have in there besides just a basic, well-rounded conclusion. All right. So when you think about the event day operations as a fan, that is how you engage with the event, with the festival, with the sport team, with the experience. Everything we talked about to this point are really what was needed to make the event happen. So for a fan, more of the spectator perspective, they're not aware to what happened up to this point. And they really don't even know what's going on outside of the event itself for the functions we're going to talk about today. So with all this pieced together, leading in and during, we need to make sure that is a memorable experience for the fans, the spectators, the participants, literally everyone involved, to keep an event going to the next day, to the next week, to the next year, or to whenever it happens again. And a lot of factors really come into play, from timing, coordination, relations, and we'll dig into that. So when it comes to the setup and the way to handle the event, there are 5 key factors that really come into play to really ease the overall process. First off is planning. So when you're mapping out the day, when you're planning the event, what is happening when? So think about the flow of traffic. Think about compared to everyone being here at the same time during this game, when are you going to see bursts of traffic head to the restrooms? When are you going to see a burst head to the concessions? When are people going to be leaving or entering the venue based on different performances, different activities taking place? With that factors in how to anticipate things. So where are you going to see if you just were to keep everything a balanced staff, balance access the whole time, where are there going to be bubbles, where are there going to be pockets of engagement? So with that, how can you minimize congestion and balance that flow out based on putting that plan into play? Delegating. For me, delegating was the most challenging element of my professional life as an event planner. And for all of you, working on your reports, you already have this mindset and approach that you are the master of the event. You want to control everything. Well, the reality is, even if it's for a nonprofit that has 10 employees, if it's an independently run event for a boosters program at a school or for a team at Jackson College, and especially if it's for a minor to major level sport and entertainment facility, you absolutely have to delegate responsibilities because you can't be everywhere. You have to have other decision makers identified. They have to be trained, coached up, made aware of what's going on. Dealt with all this, planning and anticipating absolutely have to happen, but delegating is imperative to the success of any event, large and small. Asking for help, and more importantly, trusting the help that's going to be there for you. Then, like I said, training and rehearsing, and without a doubt, communicating just to make sure all the tasks, procedures, emergency activities, all that are understood. When it comes to some of the issues that arise, a pretty direct factor is for the poor planning or the missing of details on the front end. Always double check to make sure things are sinking into place. When you might go to events and music could be an issue. It could be the volume. It could be the sound. It could be that the performers were not editing, when they should have, whether it was like a DJ or a content, a performance for a certain crowd. think about food. I've been to events before, and this is a true story. Participated in sessions that had a great display of food and arrangements for the participants, and they actually forgot the silverware and plates. Unbelievable. But you put so much as a focus on entertaining and playing to the crowd and providing this great dining experience, it's easy to overlook certain things, whether it's as simple as utensils, beverages, seating in some cases, and other factors. Always making sure there's enough equipment available. If you have an event that has a PA system or that has sponsors, it is good to think about how they're going to be recognized through the PA or MCs. This, if it's a large organization such as Illich Holdings or the Detroit Lions, the promotional team or the in-game promotion department works well with the sponsorship division and the PA system to make sure that sponsors are recognized appropriately. If it is a smaller event, it's very important to create a script, identify who's supporting, because even if you know who's helping out, the person in charge of the announcements, they don't naturally know that. So this, when it comes to the delegating, make sure that people are in the know of who supported it, who needs to be recognized, and figure out different, mechanisms to shine the light on supporters. Always test out AV equipment. If there are pleasantries, make sure that there's different and adequate refreshments available for guests and VIPs, and make sure that there's credentials and recognition for people to access certain things. So another thing, I've worked with other event planners who simply overlook guests of the event. So what credentials are is, if you were to go to a stadium, a festival, it's a little badge you hand and say, hey, with this, I can swipe it, get behind the stage or whatever. There are so many different layers of that to different events. And where I've seen some local festivals mess up is not providing access to the media. So I've witnessed WILX News withheld at the gate, even though they just want to come in and film the event and promote this great thing going on in the community, where people at the front didn't get a list updated with the media contacts and caused a weird, poor first impression. So make sure that credentials are handled regardless of what type of event it is. When you're thinking about event day tools, what checklists are in place? How many different people are managing the checklists? What's happening at this time? What's happening at this time? Who's arriving then? When are these different individuals entering? Who has access to this at what time? Scheduling is a necessity regardless the size of the event, and the layers of scheduling really are going to break down departmental to departmental as the organization expands to a larger mechanism and the event grows as well. Who are the key contacts and the leads in different functions? Kind of with that too, it's like, who's in charge of what? Who's in charge of certain equipment, who's in charge of entertainment, who's in charge of VIPs, sponsors. If you have a lot of sponsors involved, what different individuals are in charge of sponsors and in different ways. So make sure all that is laid out and identified on the front end. Then it comes to, during the event day, the management of staff, participants, vendors, and other members from there. So with the staff is what I've experienced for small to mid-size events, not AA level baseball or above or anything like that, but many of the festivals that you're planning, staff is often overlooked. Many event planners put so much of a focus on the participants, on the guests, that you overlook those closest to you, and you just assume they know what to do. That is rarely the case. So when it comes to staffing, they have to be arguably as prepared of you, from the spectator's point of view, when transitioning to an event. So what are you going to do in a briefing? Is a briefing happening multiple days before the event, a couple hours before the event? When does that take place? Really, this should happen earlier, but the positional assignments, we talked about that in the volunteer chapter earlier on, but make sure people are assigned for roles that they're a good fit for. What type of breaks and rotation are going on? So to make sure there's always overlap, that scheduling does have to take place early, but also has to be adapted if things change based on unforeseen circumstances, medical issues, or other factors in play with events. With problem resolution leading into staff communication, who's in charge of what? If it's a 5K, if it is a Pistons game, what is the way up the chain to get to the right personnel? All these things have to be articulated clearly, understood, and resources have to be available for these communication portals to open throughout events, no matter what the size. And of course, debriefings are huge, just to make sure that, you know, all the personnel that was involved has a voice, that they experience things that you don't see from your angle as an event manager. You might be focused on, you know, the certain sponsor or for a certain area of the event, while things are happening on the other side of the venue that could generate a significant issue moving forward. So always make sure that you're aware and open to what your colleagues are going to say. When it comes to spectators, how are people getting in? We've talked about before registration versus tickets versus passes. What type of resources are available for individuals with disabilities? Who's there to help them? Are you going to have a specialized staff to help people get to their seats? You know, items that have to be factored in. When it comes to managing spectators, there's two areas of focus. What is the process of getting people in? That's called the ingress. Getting people out. How are they going to exit the facility? So with some venues, there's many points of exit. With others, there's a singular point of exit. So how are these funnels going to impact the overall experience, the well-being of the guests, the first impression, the last impression? What are you going to do to drive people through an event? So an example about that with an egress, Michigan International Speedway used to host a pretty robust beer and wine festival. They have a unique license where they can actually sell, kind of like a Meijer or a Kroger, they can sell product on site. So after you get all fueled up with your tastings as a guest, MIS used to funnel you through their egress, which was a sales room. So you're walking out like, oh my gosh, there was that wine I liked. I want to buy it. Oh my gosh, here's, make your own 6-pack of beer. Let's get some beers and take them back to the campsite. You also think about that with the concept of a gift shop. You go to an event, you have a great time, you see the vendor on the way out, you buy the shirt of the concert you just saw, you buy a hat for the Red Wings, whatever it is. So think about how ingresses and egress could be utilized for more of those fixed venues, or those that have different points of entry and exit. For don't overlook VIP entrances. What can they do? What can you do to make that event special upon arrival and upon exit, making sure they do have more of a premium experience, whether they're sponsors, VIPs, or whatever it is. If you have will call needs to be separated from ticket sales. I've been to local events where people with will call get in the same line for those looking to buy tickets. That's ridiculous. I don't get it. Doesn't make sense. I bought this ticket in advance. I want to get in without having to wait in line for all these people that bought tickets. So locally, just make sure there's dedicated staff. And that's like a common sense thing for the major sports venues. But when you're talking a smaller scale event, you do want to create that kind of experience and that exclusivity or that access for the people that are buying tickets or sponsors or whatever in advance. Signage is critical as well. Make sure it's visible. Make sure that, you'd love to do nice dynamic things with signs. Make sure it's easy to read. End of the day, point of a sign is educating someone. Where do you want them to go? What do you want them to understand? So just make sure it isn't overwhelming in terms of graphics, colors, whatever. Communication's key as well. Make sure no matter what the size of your event, for a PA system, truly any festival, you have to be able, part of a regulation in the state of Michigan, you need to be able to hear the announcements from the PA systems any corner of the event. So if there's an active shooter, if there's a freak thunderstorm, if there's an activity that takes place that every person needs to know about, you have to, it's your responsibility as an event manager to get that announcement connected every corner of the facility and event. That's something that a lot of people overlook, but it's easier to work with, for more of a fixed seating venue. And then, of course, evaluation's key, trying to figure out how the consumers enjoyed the experience and giving them a voice just like you would your staff. Now for participants, when we talk about participants, I'm talking about the team. I'm talking about the musicians. I'm talking about those who have a active role in the event compared to just your paid staff or volunteers. So who are they working with? What's your main contact to get these participants, sponsors, whoever involved, in and out, credentialed, whatever access they need? Who are you working with to make that a smooth process? What communication's happening beforehand? What communication's happening during the game? Do you need assigned personnel to be with them? So in many major sports venues, there's a lot of credentialing and layers that take place for special guests. So that means added staff to make sure that they can get to certain layers, certain levels, certain rooms beyond being able to walk around freely. If it's a event that requires competition, not necessarily just locker facilities, but what are you providing to the guests? Is water something that everyone's going to get? Refreshments, meals. So make sure that you're leaving you're thinking about this from the hospitality angle to the first degree of contact, because with this, their word is going to travel and maybe they'll provide an endorsement for future participants. So make sure this group is not overlooked, though they're really your main source of engagement in many areas, especially in the athletic and entertainment realm. For sponsors, how are those activations rolling out? Is it signage? Is it giveaways, certain promotions? Did you promise certain layers of hospitality that normal people aren't getting? I don't know. So with that, got to make sure that those deliverables are being fulfilled through your sponsors. And some events, you're going to work directly with them as the event manager. Some you're going to have staff helping out. Major events, you're going to have personnel dedicated purely to sponsors and vendor client relations. Going on to customer service. Think about the memorable experiences that you've had at different stadiums, concerts, or lack thereof. Where did you feel where were you treated unfairly? Where did people roll their eyes at you? Where do people assume you knew something just because you were there, right? I mean, think about some of those experiences you've had and how you would overcome those as an event manager. Also, strong service traditionally has a good impact on word of mouth. I've talked to many individuals in the industry where they were influenced by events through those ushers who provided a welcoming atmosphere, from security helping direct them to certain areas, from the person they bought a ticket from making sure they had every question answered before they even purchased a ticket. It's things like that that can really leave a lasting impression. And then comes 2 layers of customer service. We have proactive and reactive. Proactive is integrated in the mission, the way you do things, and being upfront to make sure this is delivered in all those different sectors of event planning. Reactive is like, okay, I have to be here to answer questions. I need, in the event that questions arise or that someone says something, what's that response? A response could be you having a staff member take them to get to the guest services area. It could be you calling a paramedic to get someone dealing with heat exhaustion taken care of. Could just be saying thank you. So with that, proactive and reactive customer service really come hand in hand and make a event for some, such the level of memorability that it could be. And then the last thing for in-game or in event operations and activities, the final one is event day technologies. So think about how e-ticketing mobile platforms have really adapted the way that you go about access to events. Do you need certain scanning technologies to buzz people in? Is it a ticketed event with fixed tickets? we're leaning in this, we're progressing in this digital world where you have to have more than less technology to get people through. And you also have to have more than less technology in case technology fails. So compared to just going by the quota of, oh yeah, we're hosting a 5K glow run and we're going to have 5 registration tables. Well, if 2 of your tablets go down, now we're in trouble. So are we using a personal cell phone device, or what are we doing to check people in? Those types of things happen all the time for events small and large. And then also when you're thinking about these game event day technologies, how are these point of service stations, how are touchscreens drastically changing? Now, COVID era, things are going to change after all these people are used to touching screens. Like in Atlanta, one of my most memorable experiences as a fan, I could go up, use his computer, boom, 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 swipe my ID like a credit card, order myself a beer, order myself a hot dog, take my onions off the hot dog, add cheese and jalapenos to the hot dog. Never even talk to anyone. But with that comes the ease that I could walk up, grab it, here's my ticket, scan, boom, gone. So the way that concessions are changing, technology is really the key of that. So it'll be interesting to see how this efficiency continues as, events continue to evolve in this pandemic era. So with that section, could have chatted probably for 2 hours about it, with specifics on all these different areas. Wanted to condense it though, get really to the main points, and then turn it over to questions. We'll give it 15 seconds, see if anyone starts typing. Then we will head over to chapter 13, the final chapter in SMT 240. All right, looks like the chat bubble is calm. Okay, so post-event details and evaluation. We'll just get rolling. So one big thing that comes with filing the event, in addition, to the basics of understanding the response of the consumers, the sponsors, and the vendors, is the element of aftermarketing. So what are you going to do if, in an event to keep the momentum going? If things went bad, what are you going to do for some of this disaster resolution? If things were great, what are you going to do to ensure that people remember the experience they had? This can come from a range of areas, from holding like press conferences to social media to direct communications with vendors and sponsors. Think about that, how as an event manager, you're going to utilize press and media relations to keep the story alive. Could you keep giveaways going after the event? If it was, something didn't go right, how are you going to utilize social media to respond to certain claims, failures, and disappointments? So it's not just all good things with the post-event evaluation. It's also the management of areas of concern as well. Also, for sponsors, for many of you as event managers, if it's a small event, or especially if it's a large-scale venue, such as a professional sports stadium, sponsors have to be happy. So if a sponsor had a poor experience, that is a big thing to take care of right away. So through this, making sure that the experiences of your sponsors have been assessed, make sure you're meeting with them directly. If you just send a survey, hey, how was your time? Thanks for giving us $100,000. That just doesn't cut it, and it's so easy to go the path of least resistance in this digitalized age, but make sure those conversations are taking place, those relationships are happening, and the dialogue is there to, even if it wasn't a great event, that you got to make sure they understand what happened and what they're going to do to make it even larger this coming year. For the debriefing, think about all the different stakeholders. How are you assessing the experience from volunteers, facility staff, janitorial, sponsors? It's not just about the fan and not just about the participant. It's about everyone who put this on in the back end as well. This can be a great opportunity to collect information based on things that they need next year. could be certain technologies, tools. Maybe the staff assignments were just too extreme and robust for the heat or the magnitude. Maybe more staffing is available. These are things that you might think on paper went well because the event was a success, while there could have been turmoil in these different areas that can easily be addressed from next year or for the next event whenever it happens. Furthering on with the layers of evaluation, a big thing that I look at for events and many people in the sports industry look at are statistics. We are data driven individuals. I want numbers. I want to know based on variables how things compare to previous years, whether it's money, whether it's sales, whether it's a survey where you're responding based on your level of satisfaction as a volunteer to your experience as a guest. Numbers drive to develop, answers and solutions for the future. So any way you can do to evaluate that to identify levels of progress, go at it. Also with in-game valuations, I've been to multiple. The Pistons stand out with this, that where there's like you get the survey, this in-game thing. Hey, scan this on your phone, you'll be entered to win whatever. So for me, I don't like to be distracted from the entertainment of a sporting event, of a festival, of the gameplay, of whatever it is. So if you are trying to get a response in the heat of the moment, what are you going to give away to make sure that you engage them at the peak of their interest? Could be free tickets. It could be, hey, respond, get your whatever on the scoreboard. Think about some value adds that you could, offer up to really collect the appropriate level of data necessary. I already talked about staff evaluations, but part of that staff evaluation comes a management evaluation. This is becoming more common in businesses, just not even event management and sport management, but businesses as a whole. 360 is when you look at this from the ground up, top to bottom, whatever it is, it's a full transparent view and documentation on this is how things could have been better if things were handled differently on the administrative end, if they're offered different on the service side. So it's easy to point blame at individuals for a number of reasons. But with this, transparency can lead to a lot of adjustments, so it's always good to listen to the stakeholders, listen to the staff, the volunteers, to make sure that you're progressing in the right direction. Now, for your individual project, what I look for is really these next areas for your budget and attendance evaluations. So when you get to part 5 or the final section of your report, how are you going to define the ROE? How are you going to look at the ROI? Obviously, this is the money you want. This is the money you need. If you fall short, you fall short, right? But what's some of that other value that you could be looking at in terms of and more of the economic impact that you're bringing to businesses in the community? Those are things to, have mechanisms in place. What did I just push? Holy crap, went back to the beginning. To have mechanisms in place on the front end so you can appropriately collect that data when the data is needed. When you're working with stakeholders and developing, and when you're working with staff, participants, volunteers, whoever it is very important to have what we call SMART objectives. This is also a thing to what I would recommend setting in place when you get your first internship or you get your first job in the industry. Make sure the goals that you are setting, whether it's for you as a professional, you as a team member, you for your goals in a certain course. And I think I even had you do this, for your introduction. But for your goals, make sure they're specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So compared to saying, I want to experience working for a large scale sports team, I want to be able to accomplish this through this level of fluency, understanding, practice, whatever, by this time frame. So that way you can look back like, well, I fell short, I missed the date, whatever the situation is, you can go back and have a quantitative fact check to make sure it all stacks up. And from there, checking out like I mentioned a slide ago, the economic impact. What was the overall value of the event? How did, what direct spending happened because your event took place? What was the benefit on, local retail, local restaurants because you were happening downtown? What was the benefit for sales at the gift shop at Jackson College for an event that took place on, not the gift shop, the bookstore? What was the impact on spending in hotels? Then from that, thinking that to the next layer, how, what induced spending took place, what leakage happened to other areas. So yeah, people might come to Jackson for an event, but they could also be traveling through Kalamazoo, having a trip to different restaurants there. That's where it gets so challenging to track for small to mid-size even events such as professional sports teams. That's more of like the Olympic mega event scale when you're being able to actually identify the leakage. But big thing with your project, think about the impact of direct spending, the impact on the economy, and understanding where the money's going at the end of the day. So why does it keep on going in the beginning? So with that, I don't have anything else. So if you have any questions on module 5, if you have any questions on the email I sent earlier based on the adjusted time frame of assignments, if you have questions on anything regarding the class, feel free to unmute yourself. Feel free to use the chat with the